Welcome back. Today we got a treat. I'm joined by my friend Dawson Barksdale. Dawson is an entrepreneur. He's a business owner. He's a father. He's a student. He and I met at the executive MBA program at SMU. We're on the same study group. We've had a lot of projects we worked together throughout the workload, throughout the deadlines, not to mention the fact he launched a business during this program. I have seen him and known him to be a good man, a leader, and he's a great person to talk to us today about entrepreneurship. Hope you enjoy the conversation. If you do enjoy the conversation, hit the like button. Dawson, I really appreciate you doing this, man. I know I told you earlier, but I really appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy these days.
Absolutely,
so thanks
man.
for doing it.
Happy to be here. Excited about it.
Okay, let's get to work.
Okay.
Rapid fire,
Okay.
out of the gate, word association.
Oh.
I tell you a word, you tell me the first word that comes to mind.
Okay.
Entrepreneur.
Difficult.
Business.
Revenue.
Money.
Scorecard.
Wow. We're going to have to come back and unpack some of these. Obstacle.
Me.
Okay. Leader.
Servant.
Risk. You're like, what's that? I saw that look.
Subjective.
Okay. Ooh. Yeah, we're going to talk about that one.
Mm-hmm.
Customer.
Guest.
Team.
Awesome.
Purpose.
Service.
Mm-hmm. Last but not least, success.
Fleeting.
Okay, here we go. So let's run back through a little bit and talk about, just kind of hit the high points. Thanks for that. Was that fun?
Yeah, I don't remember anything that I said, but so don't.
I
yeah.
was going to say we have to run it back to see. Okay, entrepreneur. I think you said difficult.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. It's hard. I mean, Elon Musk said it years ago. He said, starting a business, being an entrepreneur is like staring into the abyss and eating glass. And I don't think he was exaggerating.
Sounds fun.
It is. I think our society's done a really good job of making it sound like something that's really sexy. And it certainly has aspects that are very attractive, but it's very difficult. It's not easy. It's not always fun. But it is one where it's like, you got to be called to it. I tell a lot of folks that say they want to be entrepreneurs. Hey, I want to go start my own thing, or I want to go buy a business and run it like a entrepreneurship through acquisition. And I said, you got to be willing to die with that business, because there's a probability that you might not make it. You might not get all the glory that comes from being successful. Entrepreneurship's tough. I've got a good friend, very good friend, that had this thing play out. Corporate job, really successful, has done very, very well for years in the corporate world. Was like, I want to be an entrepreneur. And I'm like, dude, don't. Like, are you sure? Like, let me try to talk you out of this.
That was your initial? Was just don't?
I said, dude, let me try to talk you out of this. He was asking questions. Like,
Yeah,
it wasn't like we were just talking and I said, don't do that. It was like, hey, I need some advice. Should I do this? No, don't. Like, you've got to, it's tough. Let me try to scare you away from it. And I'll also, in that process, probably talk you into it, because it's a worthy adventure, but it's a tough one. It's hard. And it's supposed to be, because if it was easy, everyone would do it. And there's a level of comfort that you trade off for being able to go on that adventure. But he ended up buying a company, and it was probably maybe a year into him buying this company. He calls me. He goes, "You're right." And I was like, "Well, that's not. I don't often hear that.
I'll take it."
What was I right about? He goes, "It's really, really effing hard."
Okay, let me ask you about this, because you hear that a lot, right? And I've thought about this. I want your take on it. So the entrepreneurship thing, people talk about, I want to be an entrepreneur, want to own a business. Is it kind of like parenthood, where it's like, hey, listen, you're never gonna be ready, You know what I mean? Like, you can't really be ready, but you get into it and you look back and go, okay, now I know what you were talking about. Is it similar in that way?
In kind of. I mean, I see my kids as different than my business, because I'll kill my business, but I will not harm my kids.
Well,
Right?
it depends on the day.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it's a. I mean, there's certainly some similarities if you want to draw those two together. You're never ready for it. But it's just like anything that you can learn it in a book. You can see it online, and you can study it. I use the golf as an example. You can learn how to play golf, and you can watch people play golf, and you can, in your mind, play golf. You can even play video games of golf, but you've not learned how to play until you pick up a club and go out and swing it. And the first time you do, it's probably going to be trash.
Yeah.
Like, it's just going to be hard. And so you're never ready for that first step until you've done it before. Lifting weights is the same thing. Like, you can't lift the weight until you've worked up to it. And the only way to work up to it is to start doing it. And so entrepreneurship is difficult, but it's supposed to be. And if it's too difficult, like, the difficulty is the fun. The journey is the reward. The risk is the reward. It's not the money. That's not the reward, because there's easier ways to get it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the journey to get there is the part that you have to be in love with if you want to be an entrepreneur.
Okay, so I want to go a little bit deeper on. We'll come back to some of the other rapid fire.
It's your time.
So entrepreneurial mindset. I'll share with you kind of a little Seth anecdote.
Okay.
To kind of tee this next one up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if I told you this, but my grandfather was an entrepreneur, business owner his whole life.
Yeah.
So I mean, going way back. I mean, he worked corporate, like oil and gas, and then got out of that. Owned a coffee shop.
Okay.
They would do like breakfast service, lunch service. And then he had a buddy who owned like a chainsaw. And so what they do in the afternoon, they just roll through the neighborhoods and just drum up tree service business.
Yeah.
Come to find out. So he bought the equipment off his buddy. He opens a tree service business. He hires some guys. He gets a truck. He owns he gets a facility. And he ran a tree service business for 30 plus years.
Wow. Yeah.
So I tell you that to go, I remember distinctly one day I was sitting in his pickup truck out on they had some land out in Terrell. I was probably like 12, 14. So he's probably in his late 60s at this point, still working. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget. He tells me, I don't remember what we're talking about, but I remember this thing he said. He goes, Seth, if I'd have had a normal job, I probably could have retired years ago. He goes, but I just decided when I was real young, I didn't want to work for another man. I want to be my own boss. And that's kind of where my memory kind of ends. And it was like, I don't think it was like a humble brag. Yeah. I think he was saying, hey, this has been a hard life, ups and downs.
Yeah.
And also I think he was saying, I wouldn't have done it any other way.
Yeah. Yeah.
For someone watching who's has a normal job, can you shed some light on that mindset?
I think I hear it often, and you see it online and social media and stuff. I don't want to work for the man. I want to be my own boss. And I think there's two sides to that. I think there's a bit of nobility that comes from that. It's like, I want to chart my own path. I want to do my own thing. And a bad boss will thwart a lot of people. That's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
But I want to be my own boss because nobody's been a good boss to me yet. But the other side of that is, if you go out and you start your own thing, your customer is your boss. The guest that comes into your facility, they're the boss. They're the boss, so to speak. Whether they last or not, the IRS is the boss. That's who you report. You still have to report to someone. And so I think a lot of the what I hear when I hear that sometimes, especially for someone who's not done it and they want to go do it, what I hear them saying is, I don't want the accountability that my boss brings, that forces on me.
Okay.
I don't want that level of accountability. I don't want that level of restriction and rigidity of like, I have to be there from 8 to 5. I have to do this. I have to report it. I don't want that. So I'm going to go be my own boss, and I'll report to me, and I won't make me do those things. Typically that's a recipe for disaster.
Okay.
However, I do think there's a level of going, I think like I want to go do this on my own. I want to see if I can do it. I think that the one of the things that drives me is the fear of regret, of looking back and going, man, if I would have gone and tried harder, could I have done X, Y, Z? If that's the question, there's a situation that we're in right now with the coins and stuff. It's like my wife asked me, I was telling her this thing. I was like, I want to do this thing. And she asked me, she goes, if you don't do it, will you regret it? And I said,
great question.
Dang it.
Love it.
Guess I got to do it now. Like,
yes.
At least give it a go until it runs into something that you can't overcome. But being your own boss is kind of a fallacy to the extent that most people understand. It's like, you still report to somebody. You still have to, and you're responsible. I would argue that it is significantly more stressful to be responsible for providing payroll to your employees and team members than it is to be on the team.
Yeah. So there's that, like the freedom of, but there's also the responsibility.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the uncertainty, right? So if you have a boss, even if it's a bad boss, it's pretty simple. You keep them happy, you do what you're supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
But you're saying, as a business owner, you still have a boss, and there's also all these ambiguous decisions that you have to make and responsibility. Okay. One other thing I want to come back to, I said obstacle. I think you said
me.
Yeah. Tell me about that.
The art of stoicism, Marcus Aurelius and all that stuff, like that study of the biggest problem in my life is me. And so if I can get out of my own way, I'll probably do better things. I won't be as much like the obstacle. There's a book by Ryan Holiday.
Obstacle is the way.
The obstacle is the way. And but you wanted one word association. So I was like, me, I'm the obstacle. And so the thought of, if I look in and go, if I'm the obstacle, because I can only control me, then how do I need to maneuver this situation to be able to overcome the external obstacle? But the biggest obstacle, and I would say this, people that we know, people that I know, so many people, the biggest obstacle they have is themselves. It's, I don't believe in me enough. And so because I don't believe in me enough, I'm the obstacle, I'm the problem. And they don't see it that way. And they'll externalize it and go, my boss is the problem. He's the obstacle. She's the obstacle. Stuff outside of my control.
That sounds like your take is like, that's almost universal, right?
Yeah.
That's true for all of us, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say
so.
too?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd say so. Too. I mean, obviously there's some obstacles that come up in life that you just can't get around, but it is looking in for, where is my role in this? And the Stoic says, which I'm not a very good Stoic, you know this, but I'm practicing Stoicism.
I don't know that I'd say that, Dawson. Well, and I know, so you say that, it's interesting because, and for context for people, you shared a little bit about your background, but you're someone who is facing, compared to the just everyday normal Joe out there working a W-2 job, you're someone who's facing on a daily some pretty substantial obstacles.
Yeah.
And you said, no, it's me.
Yeah.
I need to work on me, and that will help me navigate some of that. So
I'd stand by that.
That's cool. Okay. I think I said customer, and you said guest.
Yeah. I mean, in our business, in the last two businesses that I've owned, the one before that I was a part of, we didn't refer to customers as customers. There's a connotation of that we refer to them as guests because we want to treat them as if they were someone that we would welcome into our home, hospitality, right? And so the art of that, and really in every business, is going, I think customer has a bad connotation, but I think subconsciously on our end, it starts to become a transactional relationship. Customer assumes transaction. Guest has nothing to do with the transaction. That's just a byproduct. Client sounds better than customer, but it's kind of the same thing. But it's still like, these are my clients. These are the people that I work with. There's just that connotation of a customer is only the only part of the relationship that I care about is their ability to pay for my product or service. And so we refer to everyone as guests. We refer to customers as guests. These are guests. Welcome them in, welcome every guest, talk to every guest, et cetera, et cetera. Learn that from way, way back. So
it kind of ties in. I think I said purpose and you said service.
Mm-hmm.
So let's kind of get into that. I'd like to hear a little bit more about your background and
Mhm.
kind of what you're working on now.
Okay.
Because I think all of that is very relevant to that.
Yeah.
Maybe could you give us the Chat GPT generated bullet point Dawson career summary, because I want to get into what you're working on now too.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
just
yeah.
to kind of tell us your background.
Yeah. So, small town kid, went to a small school for undergrad, got out and worked in oil and gas as a financial controller, was just a bean counter behind the scenes. Found wealth management and financial planning, and that was a lot of fun. Did that, was a stockbroker for a few years, worked with a bank, started a tech company, moonlighting that, which was a lot of fun. That was kind of my first real foray into like true entrepreneurship. There were some things here and there that kind of alluded to it. And like there was people that were watching were like, that fits him. He's doing that for free and he's enjoying it. He's not very good at it yet, but he's doing it. And so the tech company was a lot of fun. Learned a ton through that. Felt like an MBA through the School of Hard Knocks. Just a lot of fun.
That learn by doing piece that you mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, scaled that, which was great, and then just ran out of money. And then let's see, a big one, a fun one, is I worked with Chip and Joanna in the real estate department. That was a lot of fun. I mean, I absolutely loved it. They are better people in real life than they are on the TV show,
Which is rare.
Yeah, yeah. And so there's just a lot of fun stories, but they're genuinely good people. I think that's where the guest piece of it started to really stick.
Okay.
Because that was part of the culture there. It was, sales was a bad word, and almost to a fault, I would say. And this is no shade on them at all. It really was like, we don't want to be salesy at all. We don't even want to look salesy. It's like, well, we have to sell some products, right? Like we do have to sell in our department. We have to sell homes. And so we kind of have to do some sales things. We have to have a sales funnel. And what do you want us to call it? We can call it something else, but we need that. And so had a blast there, ended up leaving that through a course of events. And then started an express car wash company with a business partner in Tyler, Texas, called Glow Car Wash, which is a ton of fun, and had a great experience with that. And we're expecting to scale it. And through a course of events, we're not able to do so. Was bought out of that, and then started what is now Local Car Wash, just like it sounds, very easy to spell. Unlike the previous brand, was a little bit difficult to spell unless you're from Southern Louisiana. And the intent is, the mission from the beginning was always to create the best human experience, period. And that's agnostic to industry. I said, that's what we want to do. We want the experience that you have as a human, because we're becoming such a high-tech society that we're losing the touch. And I think that's a problem. And that's a problem that we can solve, because we're all still humans. And so can we increase the level of the human experience to be one that shows that we care, that you feel seen, heard, and valued? Is a friend of mine who works at a huge Christian camp out in East Texas, Pine Cove. He talks about people should leave feeling like they were seen, heard, valued, and understood, or something like that. I'm gonna botch it. He's gonna be mad before that. But we want you to know that you are valuable, because every human is valuable. And regardless of what we're selling or what service we're providing, that's what we want to do. The car wash space is just the one that we found was interesting. It is kind of fun. I enjoy having a nice, clean car. But what we're doing doesn't matter. That we do that really well. We do that exceptionally well. But it truly is. We want the human experience to be the epitome of what we're doing. So if we pivot to a coffee shop or wealth management, which we're not doing, but if we did, we want the human experience to be a great one.
That's the first.
And so right now we're on the front end of scaling that. We opened the first one a few months ago in the last fall, and the industry itself right now is kind of in some flux, which is actually probably good for us. And so,
I want to ask you a little bit more about local, based on some of the things you just said. If we could, first, I want to kind of backtrack a little bit. So the point that you were working real estate, and then you decided to open Glow, like the first car wash venture. I kind of want to ask you about that decision
Mm-hmm.
because it was a big decision. And then maybe take an angle because you mentioned your wife earlier
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and the great question she asked you when you're
Mm-hmm.
considering doing it. Talk us through that mindset and that decision as pertains to business and family going out on that, presumably what most people would consider like a risky decision to do that.
Yeah. Oh, geez. Some of the story decisions, like leaving Magnolia, was not my decision, and so it was a difference of direction that they wanted to take, which is fine. Obviously, more to that story that we don't need to get into, but and then getting into this was really I don't know what else we're doing right now, but I've been looking at this for a while, and it did start to come together in a way. It's like this. It shouldn't be this easy, so to speak. You got to lean into stuff. I feel like what is it? Jack Welch said, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt like there was some luck involved, but we had been working on it for a while. When it comes to regret and then family stuff, I think that there's a fear that I have that my children will see an old me that looks back and regrets not trying. And that's something that I don't want that to happen. I would much rather them see an old me that tried and failed and tried and failed and tried and failed and tried and failed and tried and failed, but I gave it everything I had every time, and them go, it just didn't work out, as opposed to I just didn't try. And so for my family and for the Barksdales, that's the goal. Is we're not going to give up if it gets hard. I'm not going to give up if it gets hard. If it's still worth it, we're going to continue to chase it, even if it's hard, because it's going to get hard, and you can't give up when it gets hard. And so that pivot was one there's probably a longer tail story that goes back many more years of like looking into the business and looking into the industry, and then through a course of events, just kind of fit. And so I wouldn't say that it was like, hey, like let's just find some random business to start in some random industry. It had been brewing for a while, and then it brewed into what it is today.
And I know it kind of, maybe that was a weird way of asking and mixing in the family dynamic, but something that you shared is almost like you think about business and entrepreneurship almost like I have this obligation to pursue this. If you get an idea, has legs, legitimate, you go like, I almost have this obligation to serve as an example to my kids, to not, I can't not almost.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a slippery slope, right? Like I think every idea shouldn't be pursued, right? I've got a lot of really dumb ideas and I've had a lot and I will have a lot more. I think it's if I look down the road 5-10 years, if I look down the road and look back and go, man, you should have tried.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't you try a little bit harder? I know it was going to be hard, but you should have tried. That's when it's like, well, I better give it a shot and see what happens. But just take the first shot, take the first step and see what happens. I don't think there's any wisdom in jumping. Mm-hmm. At some point, you've gotten far enough down the path where you go, now it's time to jump, right? But if you do it with wisdom, you get to that point and it's just another step. It's not I don't know if there's ever a situation where I would go, hey, yeah, leave your job and then go find something because you want to go be your own boss, leave your job and then go figure out what you want to do with the rest of your life. No. Hold on. Take your time. Make sure you know, like, let's take one step towards where you think you want to go. And then you'll get down that path and it's the reversibility of a decision, right?
Yeah.
Bezos talks about this. It's like, how hard is it to reverse a decision?
Yeah.
If it's irreversible, think through it. Everything's reversible to an extent, but like if it's irreversible or almost irreversible, be really careful. If it's not, it's like, hey, do a Google search on what it takes to buy a business. What businesses are for sale? Step one, right? Or what industry? Ask ChatGPT. What's a good business to start right now? And then see what it says. Like those are steps, and you keep taking the next step, and then the next step, and then at some point the jump is just this is the next step.
We're just gonna do it.
Yeah.
So wisdom.
Yes.
I'd like to ask you about that. I know you to be a very curious person.
Yeah.
a very, I'm going to say this word. You may not like it, but it's true.
Okay.
An intellectual person,
Ooh.
a reader, a thinker.
Yeah, I'll take it. It's a first.
Someone out there is working a day job in a cubicle and hates life.
Mm-hmm.
And they're thinking, okay, I did all those things. I investigated all of these things. And I'm just having a hard time like deciding, would it be a wise choice to make the jump? How can someone develop wisdom? What does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
How do I know if I got it? You know, like what are kind of the rubber meets the road on that?
Yeah. I mean, two things, right? In a vacuum, everyone in their own mind is wise in a vacuum. So if you're doing it on your own and you've done everything you need to do to figure it out, don't like the two things that I strongly recommend: ask others and read. I realized when I look back that when I was working my first job out of college, I picked up a John Maxwell book. I was an employee at the lower rungs of employees, right? I was an entry-level employee. And I picked up that book and started reading some sort, I can't remember what it was. It's a leadership book, one of the John Maxwell leadership books. And halfway through the book, I'm like, why the heck am I reading this? I'm not a leader. Like, you know what? Just finish the book. I don't know if I finished it or not, but
we'll say you did.
Yeah, we'll just go with it. I look back and I go, well, I was gaining that knowledge for when I did need it.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of those first steps are not always necessarily figuring out the business. The first steps are figuring yourself out, like asking others that know you well, asking others to get to know you well. And that's tough. And that's scary because self-awareness is hard. Realizing where the motivations come from, realizing where the fears come from. What does that come from? What deep-seated generational situation does that come from? And then going, okay, once I know who I am, then I can start to learn which direction to go best. Because I think it lacks wisdom it would lack wisdom to in a vacuum at your home computer, not at your office computer while you're on the job, right? At your home computer to be searching for other businesses to start or to buy or to do whatever, and then think it's a good idea and jump on your own. I think that's a recipe for disaster. That is a recipe for disaster, typically. Getting advice from others, getting good advice from others who have done it, and good advice from others who know you. If you ask Uncle Fred, I don't have an Uncle Fred, so if there's an Uncle Fred,
I do. I'm just kidding.
I'm sure they're great. But if you ask Uncle Fred, who's a truck driver, if you should start a wealth management firm, it's like you've got to. Ray Dalio talks about this. You've got to temper all the advice you get with a believability rating. Like, how much do you actually know? I mean, we'll go back to the golf example. I would take golf lessons from Tiger Woods, but I wouldn't take marriage lessons from him, right? And so it's like
consider the source,
right? But everyone's got that source. Like my dermatologist, I want to know how to make sure my skin is good, but I don't want him to cook me a steak dinner. Maybe he'd be good at it. I don't know. Who knows?
Don't sleep on that. Yeah,
it's my brother-in-law. So who knows? I'm sure he's great, right?
Okay, for someone out there, again, think about this person. I have this avatar of someone who's listening to this and going, "Yeah, tell me more."
Yeah.
Cubicle job, hates life, investigating an entrepreneurial opportunity. Okay, reading books, check. Okay, doing the research, check. Have ideas, check. And they hear Dawson go, "Don't do it in a vacuum. Talk to others about your idea and do it." And they go, "Well, that's scary."
Yeah.
I'm the W-2 worker person. That's my identity that everyone knows. You're asking me to go tell people I'm thinking about starting a business?
Yep.
And that's scary, Dawson.
Good.
What would you say about that?
Then you need to keep your job. Like, that is, because it is scary. And if you're, you're about to open up Pandora's box.
Let's open it.
Question one is, why do you hate your job? Right? Like, what is it that you hate? Why do you hate yourself because of your job? Like, you got to be self-aware first. But if it's the fear of going, people know me as, I work at, pick a company, some big fancy company, doesn't matter, a Fortune 500 company, but I'm just a W-2 guy and I'm just making X amount a year. And that's who I am. Then your identity is starting to get wrapped up in your work. And I think that's a dangerous across the board. I think regardless of what industry you're in, if your identity gets too wrapped up, human should find dignity in their work. That is part of the way that we're just wired as humans, right? We find dignity in work. When you find men and women who don't exert themselves to do something, they start to bad things happen, right? Idle hands. So I firmly believe in that. Like, dignity is found in work, and we often mistake our identity for our work, and that's a dangerous trap. But if that part's scary and you can't talk to anybody about it, then it's going to take a village for you to start whatever you're starting. You're going to have support from others. Some people are going to think it's absolutely ludicrous, and some people are going to think it's brilliant, and both of them are probably wrong. And so, like, you've got to figure out the hard part of a CEO founder is going, what advice do I take and what advice do I leave? You got to have gills, right? Take in all the water like a fish does, filter out what you need, get rid of the rest. That's hard. It takes a lot of experience to do that.
Okay, so maybe we can use let's use local as a case study on the wisdom piece.
Okay.
The discernment piece, right? So you're doing this thing now, and I want to learn more about it. I want to ask you about local, but when you were vetting the idea and hearing from many different sources, how did you filter out the various sources coming in to know, like, hey, I'm going to pursue this?
It's a good question. I think there were I'm not sure I had a matrix for it when I made the decision, but it really was the folks that knew me well figured out what happened and how everything moved around, which is a different story for a different case study. The encouragement was, like, we weren't done. And that was the thing, is like, we really felt like we had done something special in an industry that was struggling to do that well. And we had figured out a way, we'd figured out a way to scale that, which is the hard part. And so the litmus test for should we pursue this route or not had been, the thought processes had been done. And so we had this evidence of what to do and had to decide, are we going to do that or not? And so that was really we didn't want to be done. We weren't done. We were done with the old business, and that was definitive and is definitive, but we weren't done with serving the industry. We weren't done with going, hey, there's something that we can do to this industry that I think can make a positive difference in hundreds, if not thousands, of communities nationwide or across the globe, to be able to serve people. Because it's not hard to smile. Well, for some maybe it is, but like it's not hard to wave at someone and say hello. And there are people out there that genuinely like caring about other people, even people they don't know. And in our business, that's what we do. Is when you show up, I know the reason that you're there. Ultimately, it's you want someone to care. You want to feel like you're seen. Because when you clean your car, the only reason you're cleaning it is because, unless you live up north, the only reason you're cleaning it is because people see it and you want them to see it as clean. And so it's a reflection of me. So we make sure that there is a reflection of you in it when you get done, because it's clean, right? I haven't used that one yet.
I like that. Let's tag that. Trademark it.
That's the service piece. Is like that was the litmus test. And then there were a couple other folks. The funding came together and the situation was good. And it was like, all right, if we're checking off all the boxes. One of the most encouraging things that's happened to me through this has been old team members that say, I want to come back and work for you. And I'm like, well, wow. I work with you, but no. I want to come back and work for you. And that has been one of the more humbling experiences in my life, is going, wow, like I'm kind of a doofus. Like, you really want to come back and work for me? And
you want to re-up?
Let's work. Are you sure you want to do this? And so there's one individual in particular, Nick, who's my business partner, but Nikki had said that. And I was like, are you sure about that? Like, you're saying something, but like, are you sure you mean that? And so, and she's running our site now. I'm sure she's there serving guests really well. And she loves it. At least it seems like she does. And so I hope she does. I want to make sure that she's enjoying it. And for us, it's also the team experience. It needs to be the best human experience possible.
Awesome.
Awesome. Our team is freaking awesome. They're great.
Okay. I know we're getting a little close on time. I have a couple more for you.
Come on.
Okay. So Steve Jobs had this thing. He said that looking back, like you can really only connect the dots of your life looking backward. You've had kind of a circuitous career path.
Yeah.
What are some of those dots that you look back and go, okay, that makes sense now?
Yeah. I've learned as I get older, I've got a level of hubris that has to be tempered. I can be arrogant, and the good thing is, I think the positive side of that is, I feel like sometimes I can see around the corner. I can see what's coming, and I want to get there. And when I was younger, I mean, not even many years ago, but when I was younger and less experienced, it was like, I'm going to bulldoze my way through that. Like, can you not see that? And not everybody's wired that way, right? And that's okay. But it was one that's like, that's unique. That's part of who I am. I should not squelch that. Use that. Use it well, graciously, gracefully. And so, yeah, I mean, hindsight is always clearer than foresight. And so when you look back, you can, and I think of some of it's a little confirmation bias of going, let me find that thread, whether it's for sure there or not. It's like, this gives me some confidence in what I've done does have a thread to it. I think for me, it's always been, I want to serve people, and I want to serve the local community. I mean, our tech company, the tagline was "Long Live Local." I mean, we were focused on serving local businesses across the country, and so that theme, local businesses are the backbone of America, and that's what makes us so special. And I'll die on that hill. Like, it is so important. And so this entrepreneurship journey is one that's like, this is the best place and the best time ever to start a business. It's still hard. It's still scary. There are gonna be nights where you can't sleep, and you're gonna cry, and the bank account's gonna run low or run out from time to time. You're gonna have bankers that want to talk to you because you hadn't paid them yet. You're gonna have other folks that are, hey, where's my money? That's gonna happen. It's hard, but you don't learn that lesson in any other way. You can be taught, but you don't learn it any other way.
So let's talk about the future.
Okay.
Let's talk about future Dawson. People always do like the where do you see yourself in 5 years? Let's go big.
Okay.
Let's talk like 30 years from now.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
Let's talk let's say you're like my grandpa's age.
Yeah.
What are some like minimum viable, regret-free Dawson things that need to happen or not happen to where you can look back and go, I wouldn't have it any other way.
30 years from now, Dawson, what does he look back and go, make sure I'm understanding your question correctly?
Yeah, what needs to happen between now and then to where you look back and go, I stuck the landing?
Oh, geez. Yeah. No, see, that's a great question. That's a great question. I don't think my mind functions that way. Like, I think maybe I'm still alive. My kids are healthy, and maybe they've got 30 years. Maybe they've got kids, right?
Yeah.
And that they're
family comes to mind.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I mean, that's my Uncle Bob, who may or may not see this. I look up to him more than most anybody on the planet. And he told me, he said the most, do I have time for this? I'll tell you the quick story, the anecdote. He said, we were riding horses out on his ranch in Amarillo, and I asked him, and he's late 70s, he's early 80s now. This was in his late 70s. And he's got 2 daughters that are in their 40s, or I don't know how old they are. If they see this, I won't tell them, right?
30s.
Late 30s. I'm not sure. But I said, Uncle Bob, you have any regrets? And he pulled the reins back, and he said, and he's done really well. He's a very successful business person. And he said, I'd give back every penny to be able to hang out with my girls when they were your girls' age. And I was like, and he pulled his horse back, looked me square in the eye when he said that. And I said, Uncle Bob, that for you, that probably means that's a lot of pennies. That's a lot of pennies. And kind of trying to make a joke of it to ease the tension for a moment. And I don't know if he remembers this or not, but he looks me square in the eye and he goes, I'd give back every goddamn penny. And I was like, okay, wow. You find a man like that who's had it, who's made it, who's done really well. and look back and go, my kids and my family are the most important thing. And so I think 30 years from now, if my kids know that I love them, my wife knows that I love her, I think, and that I gave it everything I had. Like, I don't want to look back and go, man, I could have tried a little harder. That's the goal. Whatever that looks like. It could be a car wash company. It could be, who knows? I don't know. I don't know what that turns into. All I know is that I want them to look back and go, yeah, he gave it everything he had. He didn't leave anything on the field. And so I don't know if that answers your question.
Let's go.
Multi-billionaire, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, or in that.
Yeah, that too. That's a good
So
one.
we're going to get some contact information from you.
Okay.
And we'll put the contact you want to share with people on the internet.
Yeah.
And, but let's leave us with, what's one message, if any, you want to share with people watching this?
What I would love for them people to understand is the unique value that every individual has. Stop trying to be someone else that you see on social media. Find out who you are, which is a hard journey. It is a tough journey because some of it's very difficult, but every individual is uniquely gifted in a way that is very special, very intentional. And you bring a lot. You bring a lot to the world. Bring it. Find out what it is and bring it. I wish there were folks that knew, like, that believed in, I want to believe in people as much as they wish they believed in themselves. And that's the team that I've put together. It's like, I believe in you. You can do this. And so it might be hard and it might be scary and it might be difficult, but you bring something good to the table. Bring it.
I like that.
Is that good enough?
Appreciate you, Dawson. Thanks for doing this, man.
Absolutely, man. Pleasure's all mine.